Hi, my name is Jerry Self. I'm the Assistant Director of Career Coaching at the Career Advising Center here at NDSU. Today, we're going to focus on interviewing, some of the best practices in using for interviewing and how to use AI to best help you prepare. Okay, so some of the interview essentials is first and foremost, be professional, right? Be the best, most professional version of yourself that you can. What does that look like for the interviewer and for you? Basically, arrive early, right? When you're doing an in-person interview, you want to arrive 10 to 15 minutes early to the location of the interview. That's not just to the parking lot, but actually into the office where you're going to be doing your interview. That helps you prepare, helps you get your mindset and your jitters out. It allots for any extra time you might need to find the location, to take the stairs if the elevator's broken, to catch your breath, to get settled, to find the office, actual office location, whatever it might need. If you need help trying to find that, asking around or finding a parking spot, whatever it might be. But know that the interview starts the moment you arrive, right? So it's not arrive to the office, it's arrive to the location, right? So I've personally had this happen to me where I arrived to do an interview. I got out of my car, adjusted myself, got myself ready, went inside the building, and I didn't see anybody there. But once I got in there and found somebody and asked, say, I'm here to interview, they said, yeah, how you doing? I said, I saw you stretching out in the parking lot there. Is your back doing okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm doing fine, thanks. Didn't know I was being watched, but I was. So quite often they're looking out the window. They're anticipating you to be there. They're expecting you, so they're looking out for you. So just know that anybody you interact with, anybody you speak to, whatever they see ahead of time, there's a chance that they're going to use that as evaluation information for the interview from start to finish. Okay, so just be prepared and have that in mind as you prepare to actually get ready for your interview itself when you get there. All right, so be ready. Once you get there and you meet whoever you meet, have a nice firm handshake, right? So no wet noodle or sloppy fish handshakes or whatever. Have a nice solid grip. Don't break their knuckles or anything, but have a nice solid handshake to let them know that I'm here, I'm confident, and this is who I am. Now, if you're not comfortable shaking hands, that's okay. You can say, hey, nice to meet you. That's totally fine. Post COVID, most people are recognize that some do, some don't. I mean, it is on the comeback to the old school way of shaking hands for the majority of times. But if you're not comfortable doing that, that's okay. Okay, just let them know. Say, oh, hey, just acknowledge it by shaking that, waving your hand or something of that nature. You don't have to shake if you're not comfortable doing that. And they typically will recognize that, okay, this is a no contact person, not a problem. Okay. There is basically no judgment there from that perspective. But be ready for it just in case. All right. And then come prepared, right? So not just are you dressed professionally, but you have copies of your resumes with you, copies of your references with you. Usually it's carried in a pad folio with you to say, here, are you opening it up? Here's a copy of my resume. Would you like a copy? Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Yeah, whatever. But be ready. Be ready. So when they ask for references at the end, you say, yep, I got them right here. You open up. Here's my references. So you have that information at hand and you're ready to do it with you and you're ready to go and answer any questions that they have. All right. So now I also said dress professionally. So what does that look like? Typically, you dress one level above the day-to-day attire of the position you're applying for. So whether it's business professional or business casual or whatever the case might be, that's the best practice based off the industry. All right. So typically, here's some examples of business professional, full suit. I would personally would say that this gentleman's pants are a little bit too short. I know it's trendy to have socks show, but I don't want to see the socks. That just looks like a trend suit versus a professional suit. But that's just my opinion. You dress how you want to dress to impress. All right. Here's another example: a nice blazer with a blouse, full on dress, whatever the case might be. Business casual is a little bit more laid back, so some of the attire looks the same, but he's got his sleeves rolled a little bit. There's no tie or whatever the case might be. She's a little bit more relaxed. It's kind of a casual dress attire. Could have a tie on, no jacket. That's totally fine. You could have just like a sweater or something of that nature. Along, you're looking nice, right? That's the idea. Is you want to look nice. You want to look presentable. Not your clubbing outfits, not your date attire. You just want to present yourself very professionally, not too faddish. Because unless you're going into a fashion industry or something of that nature, but you want to present yourself as in I'm a professional, right? So that's the image you want them to see you as. Okay. Okay. So it's very important in the pre-work that you've researched the company. All right. So we're kind of like stepping back into this process a little bit, but that's okay. Pre-work, research the company, the organization, review their website, have a copy. Hopefully you've saved a copy of the job description that you applied for. That way, when they ask you specifics about the job, you have it right there in reference. You should know what job you're interviewing for. But look at their website, look at their mission statement, look at their vision statements, look on the social media aspects for the company, some articles that may be written about them. That's going to help you answer the why questions, right? So why do you want to work here? Why do you think you're a good fit for the company? Why do you think you're a good fit for this position? Those questions, if you've done your background research, it's prepared you to answer those types of questions, which are very important questions because obviously you're qualified for the position. Otherwise, you wouldn't be called in for the interview. So when you crafted your resume, you tailored the resume to the job and to the company, you've done all that pre-work, that landed you the interview. Now they want to say, yep, I've seen it here. Now prove to me through your answers, through the interview process. So you want to make sure that they understand your why. Like, why are you applying here? Why is this interesting to you? Why did you go into this line of work? Some of that where you want to tie it to the company, tie it to that position in your answers to really show that I'm intentional. This is a place I want to work. It's not just a random job. This is where I want to be. All right. Show engagement to the interviewers in the interview process, whether it's a one-on-one interview or it's a panel interview with multiple people. You want to make sure that you're giving them your full attention. Make good, solid eye contact. Now, you're not going to stare at them, but give them good, solid eye contact. If there's many people in the room, typically whoever asks the question, you start with eye contact there. And then as you're answering, you share your eye contact with everybody in the room and you end your answer on the person who asked the question just to make sure that they understood and there's no follow-up questions from them. Next person asks a question, you give them your eye contact. Okay, great question. Here's my answer. And you kind of share your answer around the room. Everybody feels engaged. Everybody feels a part of the process that way. And it shows confidence in who you are. All right. Be aware of your nonverbals too. So if you're like, oh yeah, that's a great question. Your nonverbals are saying, I have no idea why you asked that, and I don't know how to answer it. So make sure you have a good, confident look on your face. You don't have to smile like exuberantly, but make sure you look positive and energized in the process. Same thing with your hand gestures. Like too much hand gestures looks too much energy, like nervous energy. I talk with my hands a lot, as you probably can tell. So a lot of times it's a matter of control. Keep your hands under control. Give subtle gestures or whatever the case is. Posture is very important. A little bit too kicked back and you look a little confident. No, you look a little lazy. All right, you look too comfortable. So make sure you're not doing that. But also too stiff and too rigid gives just the opposite of nervousness or an impression that you're super nervous. So making sure you're confident, your posture is good, but you're engaged. Typically, lean forward on the desk a little bit. Yes, that's a great question. Yeah, okay, yeah. So here's a time when I've done that. And you kind of share your answer and you lean back. Now, it's okay to lean back as you're thinking about your answer. Like, okay, but lean back forward and re-engage with them once you're ready to give your answer. All right. Best practices in answering, right? Now, before we actually get to how to answer, how to create your answer, there's some processes that need to be covered. It's okay to pause, right? It's okay to go, geez, for about 5 seconds or so. Great question. How do I? And think about it. It's okay to do that. They'd rather you be contemplative and come up with a solid answer than instantly start answering and you go, oh, wait, I have a better answer. Don't trail back or don't step back, but actually take some time, pause, think about the example you want to give, and then engage with them again. Okay. You can also ask for them to repeat the question, or can you clarify? I'm not quite sure what you're asking there. They'll reword the question for you. It's okay to ask that kind of stuff. If there's a question that totally stumps you, you're like, oh, I can't think of an answer for that question right now. Is it okay if we skip it and come back to it later? They'll just give them the permission and they'll say, yeah, sure, no problem. We'll skip it. We'll come back if we have time. Or if it's a really important question, they're like, no, take your time. And they'll sit there and let you think about it. Okay. If that happens, like I said, it's a very important question for them. So it's best to contemplate, okay, remembering that your answers can come from any aspect of your life, right? It could be directly related to the experience, your experience directly related to the question. That's the ideal. But if you can't think of that, you can't think of something, it's okay to take something from an academic project or from a different job you've had or from a volunteer event that you did, or anything of that nature. Any aspect of your life is free game as long as you link it and tie it back to you. So I would say something like this. You know what? That's a great question. I can't think of a time I've actually been in that particular situation. However, I've been in a similar situation. And then you start laying the groundwork and describe the scenario, describe the situation or whatever, talk about your answer, solidify that answer, and then you tie it back in. I would probably do something like that in that same given situation that you're asking about. So now you've tied it back into what they're looking for. That example is an example of success or possibly example of failure, but what you've learned from that, whatever the case is, that's the idea of what they want to do, right? They want to make sure that you're there. All right. You're there, you're engaged, and you're understanding what they're looking for to make sure you're a good fit for the position. Okay. Watch out for those filler words too. Words like, okay, there was this time when, I know. Watch out for stuff like that. Hence the pausing. That pausing can allow you to sit back and go, gather your thoughts, think about succinctly how you want to say the words. Okay, here's my answer. You get into it, right? You don't want to watch out for those catchphrases too, like this and I like that. And like one time I was like doing this, or right. Yeah, so I did this, right? And then this happened then, right? Watch out for those like filler words because that looks like you're nervous, you're not quite confident in what you're saying or how to say it correctly. Understand a lot of times those words are just part of natural language. And if it's occasionally here or there, but when it gets too much, it gets distracting and they lose the value of the content of your true answer. And there's like tallying how many times you said or like or whatever. So watch out for those filler words. And then the rate of speech is important too. Your pace, the rate, the volume, the clarity of what you're saying, making sure that you're like speaking, you're enunciating correctly, that you're really engaging with them so they understand what's going on, right? Some people talk way too fast or way too slow or monotone and there's no pitch or rate, right? So make sure you have that differentiation in your voice, that you're engaging and showing some energy in what you're saying. So for the actual interview itself, again, like I said earlier, the resume is your ticket to the interview that says, yes, I'm qualified. Otherwise, they wouldn't be interviewing you. You have a right to be there because of that. The interview process itself is they want to find out, are you a good fit for the team, for the company, and the position? So you're using your experiences and your personality, your skill sets, merging them all together in your answer. The most common interview process for that is called a behavioral-based interview, where it's basically storytelling. You're using examples from your past, either positive or negative examples, depends on what they're looking for. And you're telling them in a story, giving them a situation that you worked through and how you work through that situation to resolve and to answer that question. All right. So it's looking for that past behaviors. They want to see the big picture, like who are you? Where do you come from? Where did you gain your experience, etc. Okay. So that's typically done in that story method process called the STAR method. And we're going to break that down. So STAR is an acronym, right? So STAR is a situation and the task. So again, giving them the background information, start establishing the visual of here's the situation I was in, here's where I was working, here's what I was doing, here's the project I was on, here's the role, whatever the case might be, laying the foundation, sharing the examples and the details. So they can get an understanding or start painting a picture of you in that situation. Authors do that in books, like it was a dark, stormy night when I was working, blah, blah, blah. Right. You're not quite going to those level of details technically in that kind of emotional components, but you're setting the stage, right? And that's what they're looking for. So they can put context to how you best served or best walk through this situation. Okay, the A is the action. So what specifically did you do, right? Describe your role, and here's the situation I was in. Here's the role that I was doing. Here's what I did. Here's the action that you took. Not always what the team did, if it's a team scenario, but what your role within the team was, what action you took. Ultimately, the team was successful in whatever, and that's fine. But ideally, it's what you did because they're interviewing you, not the rest of your classmates or the rest of your other team. They're interviewing you to see what role you did, what role you took, what action you did to share that information. And then the R is the result itself. So finish by like really saying, and this is how successful we were. This is the outcome that happened. And we saved 15 minutes in this process by revamping this process, or whatever the case is. So sharing the results, the impacts, how it made a difference in somebody's life, how you were successful in this, what because of you did this research, this was able to happen. The pro and the con. Here's the cause and the effect aspect of it, right? So making sure you're recognizing that here's my value and here was the result to that process, right? And that's going to help you wrap up the response. And ideally, you're tying it in, and tying it into the question as well to really have a nice, solid answer established for what they're looking for. Now, some of the questions they ask, one of the key ones they talk about is tell me about yourself. Usually the first question. Employers usually ask this question for two different reasons. One, they want to get to know you. So it's an icebreaker to get to know you, who you are as a person, help you get comfortable and confident in who you're saying to kind of break that ice, break those nerves down a little bit. The second one is, why should I hire you? Is what they're really asking. That's the underlying ask, right? You don't know which version they want. So there's a best approach that I have found to really combine both types of answers together in this tell me about yourself process. Tell them in the past, present, future mindset. Past, present, future. Here's a little bit about me. Here's my education, the major, what year I graduated. Here's some experience that I have that helped develop me in this process. Some of the projects you've worked on, some work experience that you have, maybe some leadership and involvement aspects of it. And here's where I want to take this experience. Here's where I want to grow into. Here's the position I ultimately want to get to, my 3 to 5 year plan, or this has prepared me for this position, right? One of the key pieces in there, so this is like a B, C, right? You just want to make sure that you're not chunking it though. A chunk, B chunk, C chunk, but it's a story. Remember, this is a storytelling process. So tying together. So here's a little bit about me. Here's an experience in my life that really got me interested in this line of work. So I went to school for this. To develop some of the skills needed for this position, here's some of my experience. That's projects I've worked on. So you want to tie that all together that kind of has a storyline and a flow to it that helps them visualize who you are as a person, why you're intentionally, remember those why questions, why you're applying for this position, why you think you're a good fit for the position, where you want to take your career, etc. So it's important to have that all consolidated into a process, okay? Avoid some topics, though, such as family, hobbies, religion, politics. Honestly, as an employer, I don't care what your favorite color is yet. Maybe once you're onboarded and we have a recognition day or something, color makes a difference, or your favorite cupcake makes a difference, or whatever. Some of that stuff doesn't matter for the interview, okay? There are exceptions to that rule, though. So if you're applying to maybe a religious nonprofit, for example, part of that might be, tell me your statement of faith. Obviously, religion is a component of that organization. So then you could talk about that aspects of it, right? So example, my daughter interviewed for a charter school years back, and they were a charter school based on faith. There was a faith-based charter school. And so all of their employees had certain parameters that they wanted to make sure aligned with the values of the school. So they asked her about her faith. They asked her about her faith journey, and stuff like some specifics about that. So then it's okay. It's okay to talk about that, introduce yourself in this is how many years I've been involved with this religion, or whatever the case might be, right? So, or I'm in a political movement in this aspects of it. Sometimes the hobbies of the family tie into why you're in this field, right? So you can kind of introduce those and bring them to fruition in your education, in your experience. This is what got you interested in it in the first place, is that family situation or the hobbies or whatever the case is. So there is a place for that information, but it should just be like a statement. Here's my favorite color. Here's my favorite food. I have 3 dogs. Okay, unless those dogs play a part in your story to why you're applying for this position, there's no value added at this point. So those are things you can leave out. All right, so how do you prepare? And this is kind of a tough transition here from the tell me about yourself to ChatGPT, but how do you prepare for the rest of the interview? Okay, so there's some information you can use for like ChatGPT, for example. You need a copy of the job description. If you can find it, the company's mission statement, their values, some culture information. A lot of times that's about us it's on their webpage in the About Us tab. Is a good place to look for it, right? So you can grab that information. And then if you're preparing, like what kind of interview questions might they ask you, take that information and put it in a ChatGPT in something like this. generate 8 interview questions using the below job description and company information. You paste that information and it'll generate questions for you to practice. That can give you an idea based off of the job, based off the company, what they might be interested in asking you about. Okay. You could also do something like this and saying, here's a job description, here's the company information, here's my resume, generate questions based off of this information. Now you've tailored it specifically to you and how you fit into that aspect of it, right? So ChatGPT is a great source to do that. And again, if you paste your resume in there, do not put your contact information because that information is now public because it's an open site. So keep your contact, your name, your email, your phone number, and address and stuff. Don't paste that stuff in there, just your education and experience. All right. Remembering too that the interview is a two-way process, right? So they've interviewed you. Now at the end of it, typically it's your turn to interview them, right? So always have questions prepared to ask the interviewers. Questions typically about the company. When do you plan to make a decision? Can you describe the culture of the organization here for me? This is what I found on the website, but could you go into it a little bit further there, right? I saw that you have a service mindset. Could you tell me more about that? Those are types of examples. What's your training plan? What kind of leader are you? You know, it depends on who you're interviewing with. That information could be very pertinent. Like if you're being interviewed by your potential future supervisor, you want to know about their leadership style. You want to know about the communication preferences they might have, or maybe the training program or anything of that nature. So you ask questions about that. Ideally, if you're asking questions, you've shared a little bit of your background research to show your intentionality with this. Here's what I found on the site so far. I was wondering if you could tell me more about that piece of it, right? So you're kind of, again, sharing what they know, and it helps them focus down their answer. Where if you just say, what's a day in the life of this position look like? Oh my gosh, that can be such a huge question that they really don't know how to answer it with intentionality or focus. But if you say, I know the job description requires me to do A, B, and C, could you tell me a little bit more about what C looks like? Now you're help them tailor down and focus down their answer to be a lot more intentional in that process. There are some questions to avoid too. Typically is company compensation or salary. Don't ask that, especially in the first interview or the screening. Irrelevant information at this point. They want to see, do you want to work here? Those are benefit components to it. That information will come up later. If they ask you about salary, though, hopefully you've done, again, in your pre-research, you've looked at the like salary.com or cost of living comparison from this city to that city or whatever, and you've put that information in there, and you have a rough idea what somebody with your education experience level, how it fits into the salary compensation for that area, right? So hopefully you've done that research ahead of time. If not, come to our office. We'll help you walk through that process too. Don't ask about the vacation days because now it looks like you're there just to earn vacation. Now that's a bonus to it. It's part of the compensation package, but ideally that should be one of those motivators of why you want to work there. Okay. Don't ask what the company does. Again, hopefully you've done the research. You should know you're applying to work there. Hopefully you know what their focus is, right? So if you've done your homework, you shouldn't have to ask those types of questions. And definitely don't ask, hey, how did I do? I was in an interview once, a legit interview, and halfway through the interview process, candidate paused and said, hey, just a quick question for you. How am I doing so far? Oh my gosh, red flags beyond belief. Okay, so don't ask that kind of thing. You're not going to get a valid answer anyway because they're not going to give you negative information. They're not going to tell you, oh, you know what, that answer is really bad. Maybe you can work on that one. They're not going to tell you that in the interview process or even at the end of the interview. Hindsight, once it's all over, the interview is over and you do some contact and some outreach to them, now maybe they might tell you something, but that can be rare too, because sometimes there's a legal concern associated with that. But, okay, so again, like I was just saying just a second ago, that follow-up afterwards is very, very important, right? So send them a thank you note. I know when I interviewed for my position here at NDSU, they flew me in from California. I did my interview in person. And at the end of the interview, I took a thank you note and I tailored it. I said, hey, Mark, that was the person who hired me at the time, the director. Said, hey, Mark, I really appreciate you bringing me here for the interview process. It was great to get to know the team. I really appreciated this about the day. And I really look forward to hearing from you in the future. Boop. And I put it in his mailbox, or I dropped, actually I took that one, I sealed it up and I dropped it at the front desk with the receptionist and said, hey, could you give this to Mark at the end of the day or something like that, right? And so she's like, oh yeah, sure, no problem. Now, and I left. I said, thank you. It was great to meet you. Look forward to seeing you again. And I left. I have no idea if she got up from her desk with Mark, Mark, and ran it to him, or if she put it in his mailbox or gave it to him later on or whatever. I do know he got it because he reached out and said, thank you for the note. So that follow-up shows you're closing the loop on the interview process. So make sure you send a thank you note. Usually, again, like I said, it's within 24 hours. It could be a thank you email as well. Ideally, if it's a panel, you're sending it to everybody on the panel. Or if you don't have the contact information, you send it to one person and ask them to share it with everybody on the panel. That's acceptable as well. All right. Again, be professional, be brief. It could be email, it could be handwritten, however, whatever your preference is, how you want to do it. Okay. Now, other versions, that was all in-person information. A lot of the information is universal from interview to interview, but there are some nuances with a phone or a Zoom interview. You want to make sure you check your connection, make sure you have a really strong signal, right? Choose a nice quiet place so you're not full of distractions or a bunch of noise behind you. You're not going to be interrupted. That's one of the worst things possible, is to be interrupted in an interview, because now you're like, oh, I'm in an interview, could you leave, please? And ask somebody to leave the room because they opened the door or walked in or whatever, or your cat's in the background or dog or whatever is just being distracting. So make sure you're prepared your environment for an interview. You have enough time reserved, and nobody's going to distract you or interrupt you. So a nice quiet place, nice professional place, not too busy in the background information or anything of that nature. Also, you're going to allow for more time for pausing, because sometimes there's audio connection difficulties or a lag, or it gets cut out or something like that. So it's okay to ask for repeat. Hey, I'm sorry, the audio cut out. Could you repeat that, please? Totally acceptable to do that. Remember, too, that in a virtual, eye contact is the camera. The camera's eye contact with everybody in the room or just the one person. So instead of looking at their picture down here talking, you're looking at them here directly. In their perspective, it's directly looking at them by looking at the camera. All right. Even if it's virtual, make sure you dress the part. I, again, use myself as an example. When I started the interview process for this position, the first one was a phone screening, and I dressed in my suit. I was a full business professional, and a suit, tie, collar shirt on, even though it was on the phone, because my attire puts me in a frame of mind that has prepared me to be professional for that interview. Same thing with a virtual. Unlike the picture here where it shows him professional on top, party on the bottom, you don't want to do that. I've known actually employers who have said, would you mind getting up and turning off the light? Or would you mind getting up and closing the door? And so they want to see your full attire to see if you're completely dressed head to toe. If you like shut your camera, yeah, sure, no problem. And you mute your camera, the perception is you are not dressed completely for the interview. So watch out for that process. Dress up completely, put yourself in that mindset. Be aware of your surroundings. Make sure the camera is on, the lens covers or the block is off. You know, the little screen. A lot of laptops have like a privacy screen. Make sure that's open so the visual contact is there all the time. If it's remember in the very beginning we said for in person you show up 10 to 15 minutes early. You don't want to show up that early for a Zoom interview or a phone interview. Obviously, you're not going to call them ahead of time. But if it's a Zoom or a Teams or something like that, if you show up like 5 minutes early and sit in a waiting room, that's a good amount of time, because maybe they're interviewing somebody else on that same link, and now you go ding ding, and you sit there in the waiting pending mode for 10 or 15 minutes while they're interviewing somebody else. That could be a little bit distracting and show a little bit too much. What's the word? Little too much excitement to be there. So for a Zoom, you want to be there like 5 minutes early. That's the best process. And again, watch over hand gestures. See that? It's like, whoa. Now I talk with my hands a lot. A little bit soon, they're like, hey, how you doing? Watch out for that perception, because the camera makes things blow up. You definitely don't want to put your hands in front of your face, because the hand will block your audio and you can lose some content of your answers that way too. All right. And remember, the interview, again, like I said, this is just a wrap up. Interview is a two-way street. They're interviewing you to see if you're a good fit for their position and their company, and you're interviewing them for the same purposes. Are you a good fit for me? Do you have the right culture that I want to work in, etc.? Okay. Show your personality. Be true to yourself, but a professional version. So because it's an interview, right? If you portray a personality that you aren't, because you think that's what they want to see, when they hire you later, they're going to be like, oh, that's not who I interviewed. What happened here? Right? So you don't want to give them a false perception of who you are. So just be true to yourself in the process. And remember, you deserve to be there. If you didn't, they wouldn't be interviewing you. Plain and simple. They would not interview you if they didn't think you met the qualifications, or a majority of them, to be there, and they're going to overlook or compensate for the rest. Hence the interview process. And then smile, right? Smile, smile, smile. Be prepared, smile, pre-think out your answers, and be ready to say, here I am. What questions do you have for me today? Happy to be here. Thanks for bringing me in. I really appreciate it. Right? So make sure you're there, and you have that presence, that professional presence known for them. All right. Any questions you have, feel free to reach out. And here's how you can do that. The Career and Advising Center's webpage, again, is career-advising.ndsu.edu. Our email is ndsu.cac@ndsu.edu. Phone number 701-231-7111. And we're in 306 Series Hall, the third floor. We'd love to reach out to you, love to connect with you. And just know that our services are free to you for life as an alum, not just while you're a student, but as an alum as well. Last summer, I worked with somebody who graduated in 1986. So it's okay to reach out to us. We're here to help you out the best we can in any aspects of your career journey. So thanks very much. Really appreciate your time. Take care, and we'll talk to you soon.